right to answer questions that will help navigate voter decisions. The format is as follows. You will each have an opportunity to answer the question. We will rotate the starting position. You will have about 90 seconds, and Jen's gonna hold up a pink marker at the 30 seconds, like when you have 30 seconds left, so you kind of have an idea of where you stand on time. And then when the timer goes off, we just ask that you wrap up your thought. You don't have to just stop right in the middle, but just wrap up your thought at that point. If there's time at the end of the session, we can have a back and forth with an audience or with one another. I just ask that you adhere to the time frame in order to be fair and balanced amongst one another. Okay, first question, tell us a little bit about yourself, why you're running, and what do you see as the top needs for our Glenwood Public Schools? We'll start with you, Kelly.
Hi. Hello. Hi, I'm Kelly Stewart. I am not originally from Glenwood. I moved here before my kids started school. I'm a mom of 3. I've got 2 in the middle school, 1 in the high school. I believe that the reason that I'm running is just because I am a mom, and I want to ensure that we are keeping our kids' education at the forefront of all decisions made. I'm not coming in with any kind of an agenda. I just want to ensure that they are who we're making the decisions for.
Top needs.
Honestly, I think that just continuing to strive to keep our kids, I feel like we do a really good job with the education. The numbers kind of speak for themselves. I think right now we are striving for excellence, and I think we continue to do that. And what I want to do is just be able to offer support for the administration and the teachers in order to do that for them.
Good evening, thank you all for coming out, and Canel putting this on, I really appreciate it. I'm Tony Whitten, been here since 2003, we're military, married to Sandy Whitten, I'm sure you all know her. So, for me, being in the military and travel all around, it's one of those things to where we've been through a lot of different schools and school boards, and it's extremely important. So, what I like about here, where I came from in Kokomo, Indiana, we had 2 high schools, each school had 4,000 students in it. And I was able to go all the way through different building trades type classes. And I like what we do here from 12th or kindergarten all the way through 12th grade into the building trades curriculum. And I was excited to hear that we're the only county that has 2 different building trades that we offer. So we have the ability to prepare our kids to go into college or into building trades or into a trade, which is something you typically see only at a larger city or a larger town. So I appreciate that, and that's something I want to continue, and I want to continue to support and make sure that we do the best there. For me, the biggest thing is our children, and make sure that we continue to prepare that with our fiscal responsibility, and make sure we look at things as we can with that responsibility. Thank you.
Are we on? There we go. Bruce Ray, I'm on the ballot, I think as Candela mentioned, is William, first name. Sort of a lifelong resident of this area. I don't think I've ever lived more than probably 20 miles away from here. I think, so what drew me to the board position, I have 7 kids. The older kids are moving through the East Middle School District. My younger 2 are both starting at Glenwood this year. And with the openings on the board, this seemed like a prime opportunity, a key opportunity to be able to lean in and get engaged and support the community on a go-forward basis and make sure that the education and the opportunities available to my youngest 2 kids are top-notch. As far as the key needs or challenges that Glenwood faces, I think aging infrastructure is always going to be at the top of the list. I think providing continued support for the administrators, the staff, the educators, the folks, the people that are engaged and involved in our kids' education. We need to continue to push for those things. It's great to have new schools, new sports complexes. Those things are necessary, those things that come and help with the prestige of the school, but giving attention and time to the underlying things, the HVAC systems, the windows in the buildings, the efficiency that they run with, the support given to the teachers and the paras and all of the staff is just really key to making sure that we have a system that continues working. And, there you are.
Right, my name's Dr. William Painter, and I'm not from around here. It's a phrase I learned when I first moved here. I would say to someone, "Where are you from?" And they'd say, "Well, I'm not from around here." And I would say, "Well, where's that?" "Well, Tabor." Or Melbourne, or someplace like that. So I'm not from around here. I have lived and worked in higher education my entire life. My father and my mother were both professors. I grew up on a university campus. I have held basically every position, well, maybe not janitor. I've been a faculty member, a chairman, a dean, and a president of a university, and now I work strictly in transnational provisioning of post-secondary and higher education. And if you want a definition of that, I'll meet you after. We take American curriculum and we export it to international markets. So I just got back from 2 weeks in Thailand. The reason I'm running for this is because I believe I have something to contribute to this institution, to this school system. I'm a real believer in servant leadership, and I believe that my experience, my professional experience, has something to contribute to the school system for the kids who live here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next question, we'll start with you, Tony. How do you separate your own personal bias to make neutral decisions that are best for the well-being of our student and teacher population?
For me, it comes down to data and facts. What I do at work, I work for the military, lead 2 different repair centers, and it's all about what is the data and what are the facts and where do we need to go. And as I tell the young airmen and NCOs that work for me and the officers, emotions has nothing to do here. We all have emotions, we all have biases, but we have to separate that and we have to say, okay, what are the data and what are the facts and what are the needs? And that's how we're going to get to what we need to do. Is it irresponsible to say that I have no emotions? No, that's not true, not at all. But we got to figure out a way to set that aside. And from what I see in the school boards venues I've been a part of, from here and now into Glenwood, I will say this is probably the most successful, and the way that they go here is just really good. So I appreciate the conversations, and I appreciate how they continue to work it. So for me, that's what it's about. I try to separate the emotions from everything, and then just look at the data and the facts and go with that and make a decision off that.
So, I work as an attorney doing fairly intense negotiations over a lot of things, and the key part of all of this is getting to the underlying root issues of things, and sort of seconding Tony's points on the data and understanding what's going on behind the scenes, and basically separating yourself and whatever agenda or angle you are coming in with, and just try to work off of the situation on the ground to get an understanding of what's needed, and to try to find the solution that, and I use this phrase a lot, but to try to thread the needle on a particular solution, because it's really hard to get consensus and to get folks all together. But as a board and dealing with the contentious issues and whatever may come up over the next 4 years, having sort of a level head, calm set on it to make sure that we come into it and keep as the underlying focus what's best for the kids, what's best for the district, to work towards that solution. Is everything that I want to see happen going to happen? No. Is everything that a different board member wants to happen? No. I'm sure Mr. Embry has left a lot of things on the table that he would like to have had done, but they didn't fit in that particular time. So it's really about trying to find and build that consensus and to try to do what's best for the district in each time.
I gotta do it. Okay, well, I think it's important to understand why someone goes into education. All right, they don't go into education to make money. They don't go into education for professional enhancement. They go into education because they have a passion to teach. and they have a passion to see that sparkle in that kid's eye when they finally get the answer. Now, if you ask anybody who's been in a school as an administrator or as a direct teacher or as a support staff, they're there because they have a passion for the children, they have a passion for education, they have a passion, they're born to do things. And I think that if you're going to negotiate and reach consensus, and I completely agree with Bruce, you need to have, what is the mission? What is the one thing we can all agree on? And that is education for the kids and lifting up the kids. It's not about my personal agenda or Bruce's personal agenda or anybody's personal agenda. It's about those children, and it's about those teachers that serve those children.
Well, I would just say that, you know, personally, I'm not going into this with any kind of an agenda. I feel that it's important to be open-minded to all things, to consider all things, to know that I am one person, if I'm selected, as part of a larger group, and that I'm open to being able to ask questions and to hear what someone has to say. I believe that everything needs to be considered for all kids, that we ensure that no kids get left behind. And I think that having those open-minded discussions with, you know, community members, with teachers, with administrators, with family members, I mean, that is what's important, and I think that's how you separate it.
Okay, we'll start with Bruce this time. Are you in favor of tax credit or school voucher programs? Explain your reasoning.
So, it's school voucher, tax credit, like money follows the kid. Yeah. I've got kids that have open enrolled in different districts. I've got kids that are in split households with districts across the lines. I think in a public school context, that makes a lot of sense, right? That open enrollment is available. I've had kids that have come to Glenwood to play soccer. I think when you get into, I'm going to say more questionable issues, and this came up at one of our earlier meet the board folks for some of the school administrators. The point that sort of got made is when you apply that into a private school context, private schools operate by having a set number of seats. They've got a set number of class size. That can fluctuate, it does fluctuate, but when additional money flows to the private school, they're gonna up tuition by that amount of money. That money's not going to have a material impact, and the folks that are, I'm gonna say the target, that would like to get kids into a private school or like those opportunities, face the same hurdles that they did before. And so I think public funds, education is key, right? Education, and for the folks that a private school is the appropriate place for them, or where they need to be or want to be, I think that's great for them. And I know a lot of private schools that work off of credits and scholarships and other things to open availability out to additional kids. That's my time.
But you can, right.
Okay. But I also think that taxpayer funded probably makes the most sense in a public school, which, I mean, if we look at funding is always a key issue with schools, so.
I'm diametrically opposed to voucher systems. I've looked at the data, Tony was telling me about, let's look at the data. The data from states have been instituted voucher systems, they have pulled money away from public schools. The state of Iowa has a long, proud tradition of having top quality public schools. And that means these are schools that serve every student in the community, not just the special ones, not just the elite ones. And what you're seeing with voucher systems is you're seeing nothing more than a transfer of wealth from those who are middle and lower class to funding those people who are already sending their kids to private schools. 60% of the students who are receiving vouchers are already in private schools. And in this state, we have choice. You know, you can send your kid to Lewis Central, you can send your kid to Iowa Connections, you can send your kid wherever you want. We have school choice. The question is, do we take money out of the pockets of our rural school districts and put them in the pockets of private institutions? The state of Missouri, rural schools, they meet 4 days a week, and they're closing them up. And you know as well as I do what happens to a community when that school system shutters.
would say that I don't know all of the ins and outs of this particular program. I know high level, and I kind of have some opinions on it as far as I do see value in it at times. I also believe, though, that this is something that is a political issue, that is not something that would be at our school board level at this point in time. And I think that I would always just consider all kids we need to consider all kids, not just some kids, and that it's, it's what's best for each of your children. But I don't know agree with all the ins and outs of this program, so.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, turn it off.
I think the state settled that for us, and it really is a moot point at this point in time. It is the law, so we don't really have a choice whether you like it or you don't like it, agree or disagree. My personal opinion is I don't disagree with it, and Dr. Painter earlier mentioned how that it deals basically with people that already have the money and can afford to send their kids. I've had parents reach out to me just recently in the last week who could not afford to send their kids to a public school or a private school who can now because of that. So that did make a difference in their lives. And according to Dr. Embry, the last time we met, it's only been, I think he said, three kids out of our district that has affected. So I think district-wide, really don't see that it's been that much of a impact. And again, we really don't have a choice at this point because of the state and how they've pushed forward, so we just have to learn how to make it work. What we've got to do is figure out a way we make sure our school is the school we want our kids to go to, and that other people look at it and say, yeah, that's a school I want my child to go to. So that's our challenge as school boards and as the teachers is how do we make Glenwood schools the best schools that we can have regardless of what the laws are. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Painter, you'll start this one. It will be, how will you establish relationships with educators and stay current in classroom pedagogy?
I know some of the teachers here. Oh yeah, sorry. I know some of the teachers here. My son was in school here. I hope to get him back into the school system. He has certain special needs. I volunteered in the classroom. I think I'm at least superficially familiar with the challenges that the teachers face in the classroom. It's not easy for them to do it. As I pointed out, we cannot discriminate against students. So you may have 20 kids in the classroom and 2 or 3 of them are real challenges to teach. And I think that understanding that challenge that the teachers face with materials, with meeting with the parents, they're the person caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. You know, they're caught between the parents on the one hand making demands, the state making demands, the administration making demands, and really what they want to do is teach the kids. So I don't think I have a problem finding common ground with educators. I think my issue as a board member is being able to effectively and passionately communicate that to other people outside of the school district.
So I believe that it's important for board members to be around the teachers, to go into the schools and see what they're experiencing, to walk through the halls. I think that it's important to listen to the teachers when they're talking to us, to when they're asking for things, that we're listening to what they're asking for and how we can help them. I also believe, I've got not near to the level of a school teacher, but I have 7 years of being a catechist at church, which means I'm teaching faith formation classes. I see it's on a very, very small level what they are dealing with on day in and day out, and I believe that just listening to them and making sure that I'm present at times in the school and in the community is what's important.
Great question, and it follows up with what I asked when we met with, and I think Kelly may have left at this point, but when we were meeting with all the principals, and I appreciated that opportunity to sit down with them, I asked the question, I said, could I have every other Friday off? And I said, do you have a problem if I set up with you to come in and just walk your schools and just meet the teachers and see the kids? I don't see how you do this job as a school board 2 times a month. And I'm not saying that's what they do. I know that you don't. I can't be a teacher. I will be honest with you. You gotta know your limits, and my limit is I can't be a teacher. That's not me. I appreciate those who do. I mean, I've literally chased bullets for a living as a cop and done a lot of stuff in the military. I'll take what I do any day over being a teacher. So I appreciate everything you do. Extremely difficult job, having to balance everything you have to balance and all the struggles. So that's what we need to do. We've got to get in there and support you. And I don't know how we can support you if we're not in there with you in the trenches. Thank you.
I think the key aspect on this is communication, right? It's having an avenue and a voice from the staff, from the educators, from the administrators, right? Sort of as Tony pointed out, meeting twice a month, a couple of hours twice a month. The amount of information you're going to be able to get in that is short. It's necessarily short. It's going to be at a relatively high level. Now, as a board member, that is a lot of what we're having to deal with. But I think having that open communication and dialogue, down to the paras and the staff that are working in the building, the folks that are working in the admin offices, and having an open communication. I know for anybody that's been in the community, a lifer, but we've watched, our parents had the same teachers that we had. Our kids had the same teachers that we had. There's so much continuity and so much strength within the educators and the staff that are in our community. Making sure that they've got a voice and that you're available to listen when issues come up, I think are probably the key thing. I keep missing if I've got my 30-second thing, but 15, great. So it's more a matter of that dialogue and that constant communication in a way that is beneficial for the school and not creating disruptions on individual days, but so that you've got an open channel. Thank you. You're already done. Sorry about that.
We're back to you, Kelly, to start. Teacher and administrative retention has been complex at the high school level. What kinds of ideas do you bring to the table to turn that around?
So this is not, again, a field of my expertise. It's not my expertise, but what I would do is I would listen to what the current teachers, what the administration is saying, and it would be something that we would have to, I think it is kind of like Tony pointed out before about numbers and about what it is that they're asking for. Why is it that we have people leaving? Making sure that when they are leaving, that we are asking those questions as to why they're leaving. I think it's something that would involve a lot more conversation. I don't necessarily have, not being an administrator myself, I don't necessarily have the answers all right there in front of me, but it would be something that I would be interested in talking to those who are experiencing it to see how I can help them.
Yeah, I think Kelly hit it right on the head. Again, not a teacher. That's a difficult one to answer. If you want to answer it honestly, is we just got to sit down and figure out what is it they need and what is it they want and where is it we need to go with it. Everybody wants a raise. We all want more money, me included. So I'll be honest about that. But we also know that that's not always possible. So how do we work towards that? Are there other things that we can do to increase the ability to want people to stay here? What I do currently in my job, I have civilians that work for me, and they're extremely technical people. You can't find these people on the street. I have to grow them. So I have one guy that works for me. The only reason he works for me is because he gets every other Friday off. That's it. So there might be other things out there that do draw teachers that may not have anything to do with money. Maybe it's some other type of benefit. So I think we can look at that, but teacher retention, from what I understand across the board, is a little difficult, but it's not an easy thing. It's not something that you can just sit down and say, well, here's the ABCs of it and how we get it figured out.
I think anytime you're dealing with a large group of people and dealing with attrition and folks leaving, there are a myriad of factors that all play into that, right? Some of them are leaving for better jobs, better opportunities. Are there additional ways that we can remain competitive so that they're not at an environment where that new job looks like the place that they're going to be happier? And are there intangible ways that we can deal with and help with support for the educators, for the staff that are in the building? That continuity is sort of a key aspect of it, right? And having folks that are willing to stay, that want to stay, and that have the support from the administrators, from the other educators in the building, from the board behind them, is sort of a key factor in helping get people into the district and teaching, and get people to stay in the district and teaching. I also think we've got an upcoming bond issue. Infrastructure is a key issue, but wages and making sure that we have additional resources for our teachers plays key into that over the long haul as well.
One of the questions that was posted online was from a woman named Bethany Melindy, and she points out that 51,000 teachers quit in August across the country. 51,000 teachers quit. They quit. And they asked them, why did you quit? They quit because they weren't getting enough money. It's just that simple. 48% quit because of poor compensation. All right? And there are lots of other things you can do besides paying teachers, but at the end of the day, pay represents respect. And if we don't pay them for what they're worth, they will go someplace else and teach. They will go someplace else and work, and they will take their skills and their education and pack it up in their bag, and they'll go someplace else. We need to figure out how we can get them here, how we can keep them here, and how we can demonstrate the kind of respect that they have gone to school for years and been in the classroom for years to earn. It's not just money, but compensation represents professional respect. And we won't keep them if we can't pay them. It's just that simple.
Can I say something else? Just as a follow-up? Can I talk again or?
At the end,
Oh.
we'll have, if there's something, take a note, and if there's anybody wants to add anything that they didn't get to during the original question, that's absolutely fine. All right, Tony, this one's yours to start with. How should the different needs of students be met, especially those in the LGBTQIA+, non-Caucasian, and English language learner populations be met?
Well, there's a lot in that question. For me, it comes down to my experience in school. I was a very poor student in school, extremely poor when it comes to grades. But were it not for a few key teachers, I would have never made it through. I was told in my freshman class by my counselor, just take all the easy classes because you'll never make anything more than flipping hamburgers at McDonald's, literally her words. And there was a reason she said that. My grades, kind of led her down that road, but there were a few key teachers and people that said no. So and that's why your job as teachers, for those of you out who are teachers, the legacy that you build into the lives of our children, my grandchildren, and everybody's children, is far-reaching and never-ending. So it's important that as you continue to do, I appreciate you fighting the fight every day. I appreciate you getting down in that ditch with them and figuring out how to help them. Were it not for those teachers, they're literally, I can name them on one hand, but if it weren't for them, I probably would not have made it through school, and I wouldn't be here today doing what I'm doing. I might be flipping hamburgers. I don't know, right now they make $20 an hour, so that's not too bad. So I think as far as what we've got to do, we've got to support the school teachers, we've got to support the administration and the faculties to make sure we provide the best opportunities we can for the kids. So that's kind of where it comes to.
I think in all cases when you're dealing with education, with students, a large part of it is meeting the students where they're at, right? And making sure that they've got the supports and the infrastructure available for them to be successful. So to Tony's point, the teachers that cared and cared very deeply, right? And didn't want to see somebody just shuffled into the not gonna make it here box. education played a very key part in my upbringing and my life and life trajectory. But it was there because I had teachers that cared. For minority members within the community, it goes a little bit above and beyond. I mean, we are a smaller, relatively rural community. We are also very homogenous in a lot of ways. And we have to make sure that we have open doors and open hearts and open support for the folks that don't necessarily look like us, that don't necessarily think the same way or the same thing that we do. That was my 30. I saw it that time. But it's all about meeting those supports and meeting those communities with what they need to help be successful. My son is out, and the main thing we offered for him was just open and continuous support. He has a lot of struggles. He has a lot of, he faces a lot of adversity, but having somebody in his corner is key on his success.
Couldn't agree more. Suicide rates under LGBTQ students are higher than any other sector. And it's not because of their orientation, and it's not because of their gender identity. It's because they're stigmatized, they're bullied, they're excluded. And that happens in our school system. I think one actually commits suicide every 41 seconds. All right, think about the loss of life, all right, across this country because we bully, because we mistreat people who are not like us. And I think the school system, this is a public school system, and I've mentioned this before, we have to teach everybody. We have to reach out to everybody. We can't discriminate against people like private schools can. One of the big selling points is positive discrimination, I think is the phrase they're using, okay? That discrimination is a good thing. In my book, in my world, it's not a good thing. And in public schools, it's not a good thing. And I think we need to embrace people who are different. When I was in high school, there weren't any gay people, except there were, okay? And we kept them in the closet. We had stigmatized them, and we shamed them, and we bullied them. And I know of at least 2 that killed themselves as a result, all right? I think that for us, in the modern world, we need to embrace people who are differently colored, who are differently oriented, because they have great contributions to make to our society.
So I believe that we should be focused on, in our schools, we should be focused on being colorblind. And I believe that we should be focused on, we're not gonna get rid of all adversity, right? People are gonna disagree, that happens all throughout your life. I think we need to be giving our kids the core education to be able to deal with adversity as they grow up. I also believe that we already, as a community, do really well with this. One of the things that I was so impressed with when I first came to Glenwood was the fact that we have kids that are in special education in the classroom with our kids. Those kids were always separated out when I was a kid, That was not something that we did, they weren't in the same groups. We separated them out. I don't believe that we should be separating out these kids. I do not believe that we should be drawing them out saying, hey, you are different, we need to embrace that. I think we need to treat all kids the same. I think that we do need to understand that everybody has a little bit different learning, but I believe the more that you focus on the differences instead of trying to bring these kids together, that causes more problems. I believe that the more that we just teach kids to behave in a way that we all want our community kids to behave, that is what is important. And when you are kind to each other, I know that's a huge focus in our school system, which I love. When you're kind to one another, it doesn't matter what your background is. My kids come home and talk about, oh, this is what happened, it was so funny, and they don't have to say what the kid's background is, it doesn't matter to them. And I believe that if we make that a central focus, then that's what our kids will focus on, versus being able to learn and being able to accept everyone.
Thank you. Let's see here, we're going to Dr. Peener this time. Do you see social emotional support systems, like there are social emotional liaisons, as necessary in our school? Explain your thoughts.
Actually, don't start like that. I think they're critical, actually. Social and emotional learning, SEL, and it's taken some hits for some reason. I don't understand why. But it's one of the major mitigating factors against bullying. One of the questions we were asked on Facebook is, what do you feel about the relationship between bullying and football? I thought, well, gosh, I hadn't really thought about that. So I looked it up and I found out that in fact bullying occurs because of the significant male in someone's life. So father, coach, somebody like that. If they tolerate it, they encourage bullying, then bullying happens. And the way to get around that, and the way to mitigate that, is to have social emotional learning so that people understand why it's wrong to bully, why it's wrong to be mean to people, why it's wrong to make racist statements. I think it's absolutely critical to the health, the mental health and the emotional health of our school system. My son was in the school system, and I made the comment to one of the administrators that was in the room. I said, you know, I don't care about the emotional stuff. All I care about is the academics. And she said, we're responsible for everything here. And she was right, okay? I was wrong, she was right. So I would say that, you need a different colored glass. I would say that SEL is a foundational piece in addition to the academics, just in the way that we look at sports as being in addition to the academics.
So I do believe it is important. I believe that it's important for our kids to know that when they come to school that they're safe. And I think that that is one aspect of them being safe. It's important for them to know that there's someone that they can go to talk to, and that would be their teachers, that would be the counselors, that would be anyone there. And I think it is something, having those programs and having the people come in and you know, be a part of our school system, I think is very important.
Yeah, I would agree that when I was in school, and many of us at my age or older, we didn't have that. We didn't have, the teacher did it all. Again, I appreciate you teachers, because you do have to do so much. The one thing that I've seen throughout time, what I appreciate so much about Glenwood that we haven't seen in other places where we've been, is the acceptance of, and I think Kelly's one who hit on it, the acceptance of all the kids. I grew up with, when we separated out all the special needs kids out of the class. So I appreciate the fact that we do it, and I appreciate the fact that we have to do it. And I don't see that we should stop anything like that. So for me, it's just part of the curriculum, and it's built into what we have to do within the schools, whether it's the teachers who do it, because you're the first line of defense. You're going to see it. You're going to be the ones who recognize the most, and you report it up, or be a student going to somebody else, whether it be Dr. Embray or maybe a principal. So I appreciate the fact that it's there, and it gives students the ability to have multiple ways out to take care of those concerns.
I think in the same way that our kids' education isn't and shouldn't be wholly on the teachers and wholly on the school district, it engages and starts at home, right? It starts with reading with your kids, with helping with homework, with helping them get involved and engaged. I think the emotional aspects and the social learning pieces aren't just something that should be restricted to home, right? It's not a parents are responsible for this, teachers are responsible for this. Everybody needs to put everything forward to try to bring the best outcome for the children, to get the best resources available for them, to help them understand and cope. I myself am on a continuous, I'm gonna say self-improvement, right, of trying to like better understand my emotions and better understand my reactions. My wife gave me a hard time because she's got an emotional wheel, and our 5-year-old has an emotional wheel that is huge. And I have a little straw that is happy, sad, angry. And so when I see something that I don't understand, I'm like, well, they're not happy, they're not sad. That was my 30-second, okay. They've got to be angry then, and that doesn't make any sense. But it's because I myself wasn't helped and educated to sort of understand those nuances, to see those. So I think bringing that into the classroom, bringing that into the curriculum and the education is key to raising whole holistic individuals that are going to be an asset to our community in the years to come.
Okay, Kelly, we're starting back with you. Where do you stand on book and/or curriculum censorship?
I believe that there are some things that have already been put in place at the state level, and I believe that there's a lot that we need to focus on the core learning. I believe that there's a lot of things that are for parents to teach their kids at home, and I believe that the books that are being used should be made available to the parents to be able to see what it is, but I think that we shouldn't have some of the politics, I guess, behind some of these things driving the books. We need to focus on our core learning first, and our kids need to be able to, because when they get out, they need to be proficient in the basic things, and the basic reading, writing, arithmetic, social studies, science. Those things are what's important to me. I believe that some of the books that the state has already taken off the shelves, I would agree with, and I'll just leave it at that.
I agree with what Kelly said, but again, this is one of those situations where the state's already solved most of this or some of it. Senate Bill, I think it's 496, which is what the governor signed into law. And it comes down to what you reiterate what Kelly just said, those core topics. We got to make sure our kids are prepared to go on to life and go on to being able to be productive in a career and in relationships and everything else just as we grow. Those books that are supposedly banned, they're banned in the sense that they're not in the school, but you have access to them. If you want your children to read those books or to use those books, then you're able to go get those books for your kids for at home. Just as there are some parents who don't want their children having access to those books. So you got to look at both sides of that argument. And I fall down on the side of it to where I don't want my kids having access to those books. And if you read the law and that Senate bill that was signed into it's age appropriate, and that's how it's written and it's governed in the law within Iowa that just came out this year. So I do agree that we need to make sure that what's there needs to be there and is appropriate for what our kids need to use to grow and to learn. But then there are some things that, when I was growing up, there were some books that have been allowed into some of the schools. You couldn't get on a store shelf unless it was behind a cover. So anything that deals with a sexual explicit type nature doesn't need to be in the school, in my opinion.
I'm the son of a librarian. My wife is a former librarian, and my in-laws are both librarians. Getting into situations where we are placing qualitative judgments on educational materials and on learning, there are certain things that shouldn't be in an elementary school, that shouldn't be in a middle school. But I think that the diversity of thought and the diversity of representation that shows up in some of the books that have been marked for banning, you're impacting minority stories, you're impacting LGBTQ groups, because they don't find that representation. My son loves reading LGBTQ-based books because he sees himself in those books. And I'm gonna say a situation of privilege to be able to provide those to him at home, right? But if they're not allowed out of the school library, if they're not allowed out of the public libraries, he doesn't. Other families, other individuals may not have access to those books, may not have the situation where they can get or understand the words to describe what they're going through. And is it a universal thing? Probably not. But I would argue that any parent that wants a book banned needs to read that book and write a book report on it and understand what that book is for and what that book is about, because a lot of the times it's an allusion to something that it has to have sexualized content because it says homosexual in it, right? Like there's a lot more nuance to it than that. So, thanks.
I'm so glad you went before me. So I get to say all this, and then I get to head on to it. The Department of Education in Iowa has given us no guidance as to what books should be pulled off the shelves. So you got a bunch of people running around trying to figure out what's to be banned and what's not to be banned. The last time we had a big book banning in the Western world was in 1933, and they were burned by brown shirts in Hitler's Germany. All right? You don't kill an idea by banning a book. Now let me give you some examples of kind of books that have been pulled off the shelves here in Iowa. 1984, Animal Farm. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. The Color Purple has been pulled from the bookshelves in Iowa. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. If you haven't read it, you should go read it. It's an absolutely beautiful, brilliant piece of work that ought to be in the hands of every school child in our school district. The Picture of Dorian Gray. The Picture of Dorian Gray. All right? Not allowed in the schools. Slaughterhouse-Five. Not allowed. Night by Elie Wiesel about the Holocaust, not allowed. Now, that's what's going on in terms of book banning in our school systems, and I am absolutely opposed to it. If you don't want your kid to read a book, don't let them read a book. But don't pull it off the shelves because my kids want to read that book.
Tony, you start this one. The next one is, what knowledge and thoughts do you have about standards reference grading?
Standards reference grading, not familiar with that term, so I guess to be completely honest, then I have to say I don't know. So standards reference grading being what?
The grading system that
The
we
grading,
use in the
okay.
district.
So for me, it comes down to, again, we got to prepare our kids to be successful. And one of the concerns that I have, even though I was a child and a student who did really poor in school, if we take our grades and we have to lower those grades to make sure everybody passes, we got kids that aren't met. And I have, with our 5 kids, and now we'll have 20 grandkids, we see the plethora of kids on that spectrum, from the ones who are extremely smart and extremely intelligent to the ones who are not so much. So we got to make sure we are out there for all those kids, that we're providing that path for all of them. And by necessarily taking the grades down to make sure that everybody passes is not necessarily the right answer. I think it's something we need to look at, and we need to be cognizant of the fact that everybody needs to be considered in this, and that we have to make sure that everybody has the ability to move on. So if you've got a child like our oldest son, who is extremely high intelligence and was in all the advanced classes, if you're not challenging him at school, then you're not doing your job, and we're not doing our jobs. In the same way, if you're not challenging other kids who are not like him, you're not doing your job there as well. So it's not easy, but it's something that we got to look at. We can't just do a one-size-fits-all for all the kids.
So I have kids starting in the elementary program, which is the more grading system that I'm familiar with. But I think, and I said this earlier, it's a lot about meeting the kids where they're at and helping them progress and improve. We don't learn necessarily from our successes, right? We learn from our failures. We screw something up, we screw something up, we screw something up, and we get better at it. So in some respects, the more that can be engaged and involved in an educational program, that helps bring kids from where they're at to grow and improve with it. Now, we also have standards, right? I have obligations at work that I have to meet. I went to law school where we had one test at the end of the semester that was everything. It was a sink or swim test. That is a very high stakes, high pressure situation, not necessarily the greatest for learning and retaining what was in that test. You have to have the opportunity to have a dialogue and grow with that information, grow with that knowledge. And so I know one of the issues is opportunities for retesting. And if that results in kids that are less engaged and they don't care about it the first time, that's counter to the outcomes and the goals that you want, right? You want to give an opportunity to improve, but improve based off of the net of what they've completed. Walking into a test like you don't care, not necessarily the best approach from an educational standpoint, but getting an opportunity to grow as a student is key. So having those dynamics. Have I hit my 30 second? I haven't seen it yet.
Yes.
Oh, I'm done. Okay.
She is. I'm the one that runs into the time every time.
Well, standard reference testing is just, it is what it is. I hate to use a tautology like that, but there need to be some sort of standards in education. Our country is an unusual country in the way it approaches K-12 education, and that school districts like this, they're independent, right? I talked to the Minister of Education in France one time, and he said, I can look on my watch and I can tell you exactly what every student in France is learning right now, okay? And that's national standards referencing, okay? And I think that there's a lot of richness in our approach, a lot of diversity in our approach, a lot of strength in to be able to influence the school system and the teachers and have elected boards. But I also think that standard reference testing is something that establishes standards for us to work towards, to achieve. But I don't think that's all there is. Every teacher I've spoken to finds it constraining, and rightfully so. I think it is constraining. I don't think high stakes assessments are of much value unless you're the writer of the assessment, and then it's of great value, right? The fact is, having standards of some kind and teaching to those standards is of great value, and then testing those standards is of great value. But that's not the end of the story. That's not the end of the story.
I believe that just in my kids' experience, it is something that, maybe there are times that the kids walk in and they aren't necessarily as prepared as they should have been. Having some of those reteach opportunities, that does, I think, stick with them a little bit better, to be honest. It helps them, oh, this is where I messed up, and now I know this now, for the next time. I believe that this is something that was heavily researched, and it is something that I think has been proven successful. Looking at our ISASC results this last time, do I agree that standardized testing is the only measure? Absolutely not. But I do think that it is a good measure for us to see that we are going in the right direction.
All right, we have 2 more questions, and then, like I said, we'll kind of open it up, and if you want to rehash anything that you said or add on, that would be great. What do you know about the bond issue on the ballot?
Who do we start with?
Oh, Tony, right? No, Bruce. Yeah, sorry. It is Bruce, I apologize.
I think I got skipped on my first time, but I'll take that. Give me more time to, no. So I looked this up earlier. The Northeast, I remember when I was first starting at the Northeast, it was a very new school, right? I remember all of the shiny things in the school. I remember you teaching me as well there. That school is as old as I am, right? And it's been expanded, it's had improvements done to it over the years, but it definitely needs additional work and additional resources to keep up with the growth in the community and to keep up with the growth with the district. I remember when my kids were at Kids Place and the preschool was next door, it was a phenomenal resource to be able to have the kids move from one space to the other, especially for working parents and for folks that can't get a kid moved for a half-day preschool session. So that's what I know about the bond issue and sort of where I am from a support standpoint.
I think the Kids Place issue is a critical issue. We don't really have an alternative to Kids Place here. I think that there's something going on in Malvern with Megan Schnorr and the East Mills something or other raising money. What's it called?
The East Mills Child Care Center
East
or
Mills Child
cooperative,
Care
yeah.
Center. There you go. And we don't have any equivalent of that here. We have Kids Place. And so whatever it's going to take to support Kids Place and support working parents, you just have to get behind. I think the question of the bond issue, and people go, oh, we don't need buildings, we need this, we need that. We're in an aging infrastructure. So I would say I would give my full throated support to this bond. At the same time, I would say we need to also look at equity and assessments. all right? This is we live in a county that lacks equity in housing assessments. And by that I mean that if you were in a lower priced house, you get assessed at a higher rate than a person living in a more expensive house. So you end up paying more money. Oh, I'm sorry. Equity assessment, and looking at different ways to, I'll just.
I would say that as far as the bond issue, Kids Place is a necessity. My kids went there. Being a working mom, both my husband and I working, when we first moved here, I had 3 kids that I needed daycare for, and finding an in-home daycare where we had been before is almost impossible if you don't know anybody, which we didn't. So having 3 kids that needed daycare, and I didn't want to be taking them to 3 different daycares, Kids Place is an absolute necessity. I believe that in order for our kids to be successful, we not only have to give them the right learning material and everything, but we also have to give them an environment which is conducive to learning. And that means that they have to have a place where they feel safe, and they have to have a place where they actually have the ability to have a room that's not going to have so many different distractions because the room is too small or because the teacher is basically having to work out of a closet. The improvements that are needed at Northeast is it's absolutely needed. I don't know of anybody who would disagree with that. And moving Kids Place over there, I think, is just going to add to the success that we have.
So, having been now 40 years working for the federal government, most of that time has been in old buildings that you shouldn't be in. So, the challenge that we have, we don't have that option, so we have to continue to sustain and maintain what we have. And there's a lot of different ways to look at that. There's PEPAL bonds and everything, but and last year, or I think the last few years, the school boards made sure we had roofs on all of our schools now. So all these issues that are on the bond coming in November are critical and are important. However, there's a lot of concern out there for $40 million going into, especially right now for people who are having a hard time putting food on a table and gas in a car and stuff. So I understand the concerns. I understand the importance of it. And I agree with what Bruce said earlier about the tax assessment piece of it. That's a critical part of it. Something that we have to be responsible for and make sure that as we do our part there. November 7th will tell us what the community is looking for and how we're going, and we'll have to make decisions based off of that. So.
All right, last question. Dr. Painter, you're starting it. I have a hunch that we have a community of they might have opinions, and once you're on school board, there's a good chance that as you're out in the community, you will hear those opinions. How will you deal with this community input and filter it?
Right, okay, so everybody's got an opinion. I mean, everybody thinks everybody else's opinion stinks. I mean, that's just the nature, and Iowa is a vocal culture. People have an opinion and they expect to express it. And I think that the best you can do is listen, and listen hard, listen actively. But at the same time, I'm a professional educator. I'm a professional person, and I comport myself in a professional manner. So just because you say, Northeast there's a teacher at Northeast and she's really bad, this isn't necessarily, I'm happy to listen to that, but as a professional, I can't respond to that. I mean, how can you respond to that? Okay, you have to have a professional response. So I think that having a professional attitude, a professional comportment, and being open and actively listening to what members of the community say to you, or run away. I might just run away.
I believe I'm out in the community all the time. My kids are active in sports. We're active at church. We're active, they're dancing, whatever. So, I'm around other parents. I think it's important for us to have discussions. I think it's important to be open-minded, and I think it's important to listen to what everyone says. Going back and doing the research, looking at what is actually, what is behind these different things, depending on, is it someone just venting, or is it someone wanting, do they think that change needs to be made? I think research is important, but I think the biggest thing is regardless, we have to keep in mind, this is for our kids, right? How is this going to impact our kids? Maybe you had a bad taste in your mouth about a teacher or whatever, but at the same time, is there something that's negative for our kids? Then we need to be looking at it, and that is, or is it something that's positive for our kids? We need to make sure that we're continuing. You know, I think as long as we keep our kids the forefront of everything, I think that that's what's important.
I completely agree with Kelly's assessment there as far as our kids are what's most important. As school board members, our main focus when you go out into the Iowa School Board website and the pamphlets and stuff that we're all getting as candidates, our main job is we are an avenue for Mills County residents or Glenwood school residents to come to us with their concerns, their gripes, or hey, you had a great job. That's what we're here for. So for me, it comes down though to what I said earlier. What are the facts? Where do the facts lead us? And those are types of situations that are easy to get emotionally charged. And fortunately, one of my jobs, in law enforcement was able to try and bring down some of those emotions and knowing how to do that. Don't know that I'll be able to do it here. One of the things that Dr. Ambery told me in our last meeting is like, if you say you're going to be the fix-it guy, everybody's going to want you to fix it. I'm not the fix-it guy, okay? So, but we're here to help fix it. We're here to help to address it. That's what our job is we're here for you. So that's what we do, and that's what we're here.
I've started work on a bunker so that if I get elected, I have a nice place to hide out. No. In the same way that the dialogue needs to happen with the employees of the district, with the administrators, with the educators, with the staff, that same dialogue has to happen with the community, right? As an elected official on the school board, we're there to represent the community. We're there to represent the voice of the community, the will of the community. Are we, none of us are going to promise to be a fixer on anything, right? Because there is no simple fix on all of the complex issues that face the school district. We're going to have to be individually responsible for our own decisions, but that's based off of the community, the feedback, the information that we get, and then the data and facts and what's happening within the district and where things have to be prioritized. I had a former boss that used to explain it as strategic disappointment. There's only so much you can accomplish and only so much you can do within a limited time period, and so you have to decide who you're going to have to disappoint at a certain point in time. That's my 30 seconds. I had that time. But it's that dialogue, it's that back and forth, you're going to have people that come in very heated, and you're going to have to be level-headed and calm and listen, be an ear for them if they need to vent, if they have concerns, but also factor in the larger picture of what's behind the district and what needs to happen within the district. So, thank you.
All right, I don't have any more questions, but I thought we'd start with you, Kelly, and if you want to just at least add any last minute thoughts, and then I think Ms. Dr. Embray is going to be showing some information about the bond issue at 7:40. So if we have time in between your last thoughts and maybe some questions from the community as well, so.
So I just had another thought regarding the retention issue, and again, I'm not, an administrator, so I don't know all the ins and outs, but I do believe everybody wants a raise, as was kind of stated. I don't think that that's the single most important factor.